Music Not Diving is brought to you by Acid Nation, formerly AC55ID.com. Acid Nation is the fastest growing electronic music marketplace. It is a direct-to-consumer platform. So if you're an artist or a label looking to sell to your fans direct, then this is a great place to be. And if you're a music fan, well, acidnation.com is a great place to be spending your time. What is the difference between Acid Nation and other D2C platforms? Well, for example, they have their own pressing plant. So if you're doing vinyl, if you want to get into doing vinyl, they can absolutely help you with that. And they can fulfill vinyl orders direct from fans. That is pretty incredible. They also have a fulfillment service, so they can store your stock, pack up the orders, send them out. You don't have to do anything. Again, that's pretty amazing. You can stream music on the platform, and the streaming payback rates are 1 cent per stream. Yeah, the mythical 1 cent per stream is reality on acidnation.com. The other great thing about them is they're supporting Music Not Diving. So I suggest you head over to acidnation.com to check them out.
I felt like we were transcending the true drum and bass scene and just exploring what else was out there and what could be built. You know, what you could create out of the next thing rather than relying on what had already existed for so long. And musically and scene-wise, that was always important to us. Stagnation would be the death of Pendulum if we had have just kept doing... We never stopped, like, moving forward.
This is Music Not Diving with Scuba.
Welcome to the show. I'm Scuba. This is Music Not Diving. Okay, I'm going to keep this to a minimum because apparently my intros are too long. On the show this week, we have none other than Hornet from Pendulum. Yeah, Pendulum, one of the biggest drum and bass acts of all time, maybe the biggest. They've got a new album out for the first time in 15 years. It's called Inertia. So we're here to talk about that, basically, but also the history of Pendulum, their role in the story of drum and bass. They're from Perth, Australia originally, but moved to the UK in the early 2000s. It's a fascinating story. It's close to my heart because I was super into drum and bass, and their emergence was kind of important in the story of the whole thing. So this is a good one. You're going to enjoy it. Let's get into it, shall we? But before we do that, a reminder that you can support the show on Patreon, patreon.com/ScubaOfficial. If you don't want to do that, completely understand. Like this video and leave a comment. Tell me it's good, tell me it's bad. Any feedback is great. Just do it, basically. So without further delay, let's head over to the studio and talk to Hornet.
Brought to you by acidnation.com.
Hornet, welcome
Hello
to the show.
Thank you.
How's it going?
Good. Nice to be in the UK. I haven't been here for a couple months. Right. But it's good to be back. Spent the last few months. I missed the whole summer. I was in Australia.
Right.
Hectic winter. No one believes me when I say it was cold and raining, but miserable, but it was cold and raining. And
Was it? Okay.
And so I didn't do much of the festival run this year or anything much at all because we had a new record on its way.
Right.
Which we have just birthed.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting flashback to days of old when we made albums.
Sure. That's the first one in 15 years.
We did 3 in 5 years and then took 15 years to make the next one.
Yeah.
Which I think is totally fine.
I mean, it makes a bit of sense. Some kind of. I mean, like, why do one now? What was the kind of catalyst to actually make it happen?
Thinking about the timeline between the last one and now, I can't actually think of a time when it would have made any sense at all.
Okay.
And Rob and Gareth from Pendulum wanted to do Knife Party, so they pursued that for a good few years and had some fantastic wins with that project. And then I guess around 2017, the sort of idea of doing some more Pendulum-related things started to make sense.
Right.
Adam Russakoff from Ultra in the States was actually quite instrumental in pushing Rob to do it again. Huge Pendulum fan, even though he has, these main stage EDM guys on his speed dial. He's like, I want you to do a Pendulum live show at Ultra. And Rob was like, well, if we can do a Knife Party set as well, back to back, we'll do it. And he's like, done.
Okay.
So I think that was 2017 and that sort of lit the fire and Rob got reinterested in doing.
Wait, so sorry, how long was the hiatus then?
Well, the last live show was 2011.
Oh, okay.
And then I just carried on DJing throughout that period as Pendulum DJ set. And then Rob and Gads were doing Knife Party. And then, I guess it was 6 or 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, right.
Of really not a lot of Pendulum sort of content being made, maybe the odd, I mean, we never stopped writing, but the focus was on Knife Party for that period. And the focus for myself was just to keep DJing and to keep the brand percolating. And I did that. And it was odd because it seemed to get more popular the longer it had been since we'd put out a record.
Right.
And I was like, well, how long has this got in it? How long can we do this for? And there was never a finite answer of when that needed to end. So I just kept going.
Yeah.
And then,
but it's actually super useful having that out there, right? Because if the guys are doing Knife Party, which is, I mean, there are similarities between the two sounds, but it is a separate thing, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to me, it sounds the same because I know where it came from and I know who made it. And it's the boys.
I mean, a lot of the sonic palette is similar,
I mean, the point of it was there's many points to why Rob wanted to do Knife Party, and he's probably the best person to talk about that. But from my point of view, it was like, okay, all of this EDM stuff is blowing up, and you've got Skrillex and Zed and, you know, Madeon and kids like this who are making this, Porter Robinson, making this incredible sort of intricate music that's not drum and bass, that has, I guess it had the wow factor of when we started with drum and bass, the sonic sort of, the impressive sonics of it. And Rob was like, right, I want to beat you.
It's really interesting because, I mean, I went back yesterday and listened to all of the early Pendulum stuff, and we'll talk about the early years of it because I mean, I was sort of coming out of my D&B phase as you guys became popular, but actually listening to that early stuff, the influence on Skrillex and the kind of American version of dubstep, it's so clear.
So clear.
It's like
to me,
completely straight line.
It's so obvious, and it's something that so few people have talked about. And I used to see Skrillex at drum and bass raves in Los Angeles, almost like taking notes.
Right.
And he's manifested what he was going to do via the sound that I guess we were playing, but he didn't want to do the same thing. He wanted to make a new thing on his own and put his melodic hardcore slant on electronic music, and I think he succeeded really well doing that. But it's so obvious to me where that came from.
Yeah, completely. Like just the sounds are just there.
Yeah.
Like and not just the sounds, also the kind of like the approach to structure of tunes.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Because I think that's what I found quite difficult about the early Pendulum stuff. Having been a fan of the kind of super linear form of drum and bass, you know, with just one bass line for 8 minutes.
For sure.
Actually. And then suddenly the stuff that you guys are doing is like, it's so all over the place, you know, and I really found it difficult to get my head around initially. Anyway.
I think it's the difference between writing tunes and writing songs.
Yeah.
And we never wanted to write tunes.
Yeah.
Because I'd written tunes prior to Pendulum, and they did that exact thing. They stuck to that mold of the DJ structure, and I was quite comfortable doing that. And then I was like, I can't do that forever. Some people can do that forever.
Yeah.
Fine. You want to make an 8-minute rollout for a 30-year career, that's great. But I think if I look back on our early work, I almost felt like we were ticking each style and each vibe off as we made each song. And I was like, well, we've done it once. Why would we do it for 30 years? But some people did struggle. The drum and bass scene truly struggled with what we were doing. And I was like, look, you can't just concentrate on what we're doing. There's 500 guys who are doing what you like already. But the amount of heat that we were getting for adding some song structure and a bridge and a chorus, and I was like,
yeah, we're going to come back.
God,
we're definitely coming back to this. We're coming back to this. So like, but with Knife Party and what, I guess the itch that they wanted to scratch, was it, I mean, how competitive do you think it was in Rob's mind and maybe your mind too? I mean, like, what did you think about all that stuff?
I loved it. I loved the competitive side of it. I think that was such an important thing for us in our early days. And weirdly, absolutely not now. But at that, you know, you're younger, you're full of piss and vinegar, you want to beat everyone, and that was necessary to achieve, I think, what we did. And then going on to Knife Party, I guess he identified some targets and was like, I've got to sonically match up with that. But he's got the power of his songwriting abilities behind it. And it's nice to have things that you want to try and accomplish that are similar, or if not better. Maybe the creativity struggles a little bit if that's your sole motivation, but it was never our sole motivation. We were writing what we wanted to write, but it's really good if you've got something sonically that you like, I need to beat that. It's very competitive, and
it's a motivating factor. I absolutely agree. Yeah, and can be very powerful motivating factor.
I think there's probably a lot of people who are, you know, pure artists and don't think of it like that. That's fine, but you're probably not DJing at One Nation you know, at the Sanctuary in Milton Keynes after Andy C.
Yeah, right.
You know,
you got,
and we were.
Right,
and I was like, right, first tune, Andy C's just played a Dillinger tune last. We've got to come with it. And that was what motivated us, because that was, at that time, that was where we wanted to be, was on those stages with those guys, and you needed to be able to compete. And I think Knife Party was just an extension of that.
Sure.
So you've got these American EDM guys, and then you've got Rob Swire just like, come on then.
Right.
And
so, but with the, I mean, as you mentioned, this latter period, not like that at all. And it all seems, I mean, having read a few of your previous interviews, or the more recent interviews anyway, it seems like everything's extremely positive, I have to say.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, we're a much lighter hearted bunch than we used to be.
Right.
I think that if you dig deep into the lyrical content and the overall vibe of the most recent Pendulum album, I think you'll see there is that darkness there. But publicly and personally, I think we've come a long ways from where we were. I used to just revel in the darkness of just being this angry off internet hater. And I just got to a point where I was like, I think it was when I was about 38. I don't know. It wasn't exactly like flowers and rainbows, but I was just like, life's pretty good, man. There's no need to be like a moody jungleist all the time. It's such a cliche, and you've literally just lived it for 15 years. So I think collectively we all just got a bit nice. I think that's the world though. Like, you look at all the guys that were the hard techno guys, you know, your Marco Corollas and Marco Baileys and those guys. They are one hand gesture away from doing Love Hearts on stage. And I feel like everyone,
I think they're probably doing that.
probably already are, I don't know. But I feel like a lot of those guys were, you know, moody and hard, and you got this image and this Berlin about you. And then suddenly it's like, man, things are pretty nice. Yeah. The music slows down. You get a bit happier. We have not quite got to that point, but I think you're just a bit of age and a bit of being a bit more happy in yourself and who you are and what you've achieved. It goes a long way.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, I mean, as you said, like during the hiatus period, like it wasn't a lull really. If anything, the kind of attention was and the kind of appetite was growing for more stuff. And you know, the touring side of it, the live side of it, is really like gained a lot of momentum in the last few years, like doing really big shows. I don't know what the planned tour is for the record, but no doubt is. I mean, the last time you played in London was the O2. Was that the last one? Yeah. I mean, that's a big show. I mean, the question I had written down actually with that stuff, I mean, a lot of the kind of large scale touring that goes on at the moment is dominated by legacy rock acts. Yeah. Like, are you guys a legacy rock act at this point?
You blink and you're a legacy act, and then someone says it to you, you know, someone in the corporate space and management or bookers, and they go, you know, you guys are going to have a legacy sort of effect. And I was like, disgusting, dirty word. How dare you? We have a new record. And it's like, I don't know. I think The Prodigy is a prime example of that. Because if you go to watch The Prodigy, there is 50 to 60-year-old geezers who want to hear Experience. And they're like, I remember when, you know, and I was like, oh my God, at what point does that become who you are? It's something that I've always wanted to avoid. We're at the coalface in our DJ sets of what is brand new and what is cutting edge and what is our new output. But I think longevity just paints you into that corner eventually. Like, I saw there was a new Soul Wax album this week, and, you know, my old friends in Australia who are pushing 50 are like, awesome. And I'm like, what about, you know, I don't think anyone should write music for 18-year-olds specifically, but I feel like it'd be nice if they caught onto it as well. And I feel a similar thing with us. Like, you call me a legacy act, I'm pretty insulted about that. But I feel like it's an impossible thing to escape just because of longevity.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, if you're around for a certain amount of period, it just automatically happens, right? I mean, I went to see, I've seen two acts this year who were important to me when I was very young. I went to see Orbital doing just the Brown album. And I went to see Smashing Pumpkins a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
And Pumpkins have got a new album out. And
I was going to say, who cares? But
well, that's
you should care.
It's actually pretty good, but I mean, they played like two tracks off it.
You want to hear Gish, you want to hear Siamese Dream.
Yeah.
And then you realise that
Melancholy,
Gish came out in 1991. And you're like, wait a sec.
Well, it was 30 years of Melancholy.
Yeah.
Was the
And I view that as the later stuff.
yeah, right, exactly. But I mean, like that is the kind of reality of big touring acts these days, isn't it? I mean, it really is. I mean, it says something about who's going to these shows, who's got money in their pocket. And it also says, I think, probably something about, music, the kind of latter day music and the kind of acts that are breaking through. And, the nature of the audience, I suppose, too, which has sometimes to do with like who's got money. Like, what are who comes to your shows? I mean,
my God, it's the weirdest mix.
Yeah.
We've never been able to work this out. We've actually spent like analyzing crowd shots and gone, who are these people?
Right.
Because you'll have front row barrier campers who are pushing 60,
right,
adorned head to toe in merch. And I'm like, you've been at every live show that I can remember us doing since 2008. And then there'll be we have this new crop of Pendulum fans who are just into the live show as if we're a full band. Right. They're not into drum and bass. They're not into electronic music in the slightest. Yeah. And they idolize the singer as if we were a traditional band. And so they're the newer crop. And they'll say, I go on our Discord or I look on our socials and they say, oh man, why can't you come and play in Seattle? And I was like, I used to play in Seattle 3 times a year. Right. They're like, what? When? I was like, 2006 through to 2012. And they're like, I was born in 2005.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, right. That's crazy. Okay. So there's the new crop. And I think our fans have somehow transcended, genres and age. And coming from drum and bass, that's quite strange because I find a lot of the sort of more jump up oriented stuff that's currently popular, those people seem to have a really short cycle. Like their fans are in and out in 3 or 4 years. The tunes are hot and crazy, but in the current climate, the tunes seem to last the lowest amount of time that I can ever remember. And I'm quite glad that we have a bit of a legacy about us because I can walk into a club and play records we made 20 years ago and it doesn't matter. And they don't sound old. They don't sound, well, maybe they sound old to some people who are, pushing the newer kind of more sonically brilliant stuff. But I feel like some of those records haven't aged as much as modern tunes. So the fan base seems to have adapted with that and just carried through. It wasn't like I can remember when we started to do gigs at student unions and I was like, why am I playing to 19-year-olds? And they said, well, because they're the future. Well, those 19-year-olds are 40 now. And because it was 2005, I was doing that and they're still at the gigs. And I'm sure that's not that common with a lot of modern hype-based dance music acts who come and go. Their fans come and go as well. And ours seem to have just stayed around forever.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because drum and bass in particular is traditional or is often seen as being kids music, basically.
Yeah.
And there seems to be this kind of never-ending cycle of the kind of regenerative, dance floor full of 18-year-olds at Fabric or wherever, or hospitality or wherever, which just kind of like churns over. Do you know what I mean? Just just churns out, it keeps turning over and keeps turning over, and has been doing so since 1996 or whatever, 1995. But there are, as you say and as you demonstrate, people who stick around and people who are fans of specific acts rather than being fans of the genre, because that's often what happens in dance music. People are fans of the genre rather than being fans of specific people within that. Yeah, so I like techno or whatever. That's.
I mean, I I've always been a vocal advocate of genres. Everyone who says they're genre fluid or genres aren't important, I'm like, you're speaking your age, perhaps, because they were very important, especially where we came from. Drum and bass was the dirty red-headed stepchild of dance music, and we got room 3 with the PA, and the house and trance room would just be like, you guys suck. And I was like, we're going to take this main stage one day, you watch. And we pushed it and pushed it and pushed it. And I guess there's a similar thing with that in dubstep as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, as you were saying, the early years of dubstep were like empty
like
rooms,
that,
basically.
Yeah. I remember playing, touring with Hatcher in the early days.
Okay,
and
that must have been an experience.
He had such an amazing array of tracksuits.
Okay.
I remember turning up at sort of student union kind of clubs, and he literally come. I mean, this was I think it was in Kent or somewhere down near Guildford.
Right.
And he was like, they're going to hate me. And he's still on transition dub plates. He's come straight out of Big Apple.
Yeah.
And I'm playing new Pendulum tunes that's going off, and Hatch has played before me, and he's just shaking his head. He's like, I was like, they'll get it, Hatch. You know, just
Stick at it.
you love this. You know, you'll push it and it will pop. I promise. And he's like, gaze. I don't know. But yeah, N-Type as well. I played in America with him, same thing. And the Americans just stood there staring at him like,
Yeah.
what the hell is this, dude? My Molly's not popping. And then 5 years later, it was Skrillex, and they're like, Dubstep for life.
Maybe
And I'm
like 2 years later.
Yeah, not even. Yeah, it would have been a couple of years. And I was like, if it's Dubstep for life, can you bell N-Type and tell him that, please? And say, yeah, I remember when you were Foundation.
Yeah.
Dubstep was interesting like that because I felt a bit of an affinity, especially in the States, before it popped, because you know, drum and bass has had its challenges, and I think that no one could have looked at dubstep as a genre and seen how the Americans would take it and blow it up. Yeah, sure. I remember going to a dubstep night must have been San Francisco. I'm sure it was the first one. It was Juju.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And Joe Nice.
Yeah.
And I was like, those dudes never get their flowers.
No.
As far as I'm aware.
I mean, Joe's been on the podcast actually, but like a long time ago. He's a big character.
But I remember Juju had come out of drum and bass.
Yeah.
He'd done all this stuff with DJ Craze, and he's like, I'm vibing so hard on this music. I'm going to put on this night. And it's like 17 people there on a Thursday. And I was like, this is like being in London, but it was weird for it to be in America. And then, like you said, a couple of years later, it's music 1.0. It's like it's replaced house music as my first nightclub experience. And they just used to do this one hand dance where they just wave one arm. And I'm like, can you not skank? I just say, but I guess you don't skank the Skrillex tunes. You mosh.
You mosh, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was interesting. We're wildly off topic here. I actually forgot.
No, not at all.
What we're even talking about.
I mean, I remember my abiding memory of the kind of emergence of that stuff was playing Movement and I forget what. I mean, it was a bit later.
Rumba.
Sorry,
in London.
No. I mean Movement in Detroit.
Oh, Detroit, right? Yeah.
And I was on the Red Bull stage, and it was the year, I forget what year it was, but Skrillex was big enough that he was headlining the Red Bull stage.
Okay.
But I hadn't seen him before and hadn't really paid much attention to it. And I played earlier on, stuck around, there were a couple of people between our sets. But by the time he came on, it was just like nothing I'd ever seen before. It was just bedlam, basically.
Yeah. I was at his first show in London and his first show in Perth. He used to use that little controller, Evolution UC33. And it was just so different. Just the reaction that people were having to these records was like it was like a punk rock band or a hardcore band.
Yeah.
Or the first Pendulum records.
Sure.
Whereas all the drum and bass people would stand there like this, just watching kids mosh. Yeah. And I remember them getting really pissed off about how people were dancing. They said, if you're trying to dictate how people dance, you're too old.
Yeah.
Just let them do what they're going to do. And then Skrillex, I watched that and I was like, holy shit. It was funny when he used to use that controller because he'd unplug it, get excited and throw it into the crowd and be like, oh, I need that back. And then we were in Perth, I think it was after Future Music Festival. And he said, Paul, I hate using this controller. Can you teach me how to DJ? I was like, yeah, right.
Okay.
So we went into a club in the daytime, a friend's club called Shape in Perth, and literally showed him how to use CDJs, and then he played on them that night. And I was like, off you go, son.
Okay.
It's my contribution to the world.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
But yeah, what an amazing human. Not really sure what he's doing these days. I kind of vibe a little bit, but I would love to hear some of that original kind of...
I mean, he has transcended genre.
For sure. Yeah, he's out there just doing whatever. Yeah. It's interesting when people have such a big personal profile and such a big discography and such a big output, and then they just become studio guys working for other like rappers and stuff. I'm always a bit sad about that, but if it makes them happy.
I mean, he had that album, didn't he? This year, in fact, I think. One of those kind of big sprawling 30 tracks.
I was going to say, it was like 10 albums in one.
Yeah, right. And with his stuff, I'm always like, there's always such a lot of interesting stuff within it. I find it difficult usually to vibe with the whole thing, if you saw what I mean. I find it always an interesting listen, but like it's absolutely not my thing, generally speaking, as a whole. But I mean, he's an incredible producer, generally.
It reminded me of a demo folder.
Right.
Of all of your renders.
Okay. Yeah.
A mixtape, essentially. Of like all of your 1 minute long clips that you just assemble and be like, I got to get these out.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel the same way about a lot of stuff that I write as well. And I'd kind of started a label a couple of years ago and I did a compilation.
I was going to mention this. Yeah. Like a big sprawling compilation, right?
60 artists, but all of the songs were under 90 seconds. And the premise was, I know that I have got 1,000 demos that are under 90 seconds long that I just know will never be longer than that. They might be amazing, but I might have lost the project file. I might have lost a sample. I might open it and it won't open. And I'll be like, this one clip.
Every producer has like thousands of these things, right?
So I put the call out and I had, so admittedly out of the 60 artists, 2 of them are me under 2 different aliases, but I had 58 people come back within about a week and I could have done 3 volumes of it. Unfortunately, dealing with 58 people is a righteous pain in the. So I did one, release it on cassette and on digitals called the 90-second maximum compilation. Rusco even had a tune on the thing. And I was like, free, off you go into the world somehow. Get off my hard drive. So maybe sometimes when I listen to big sprawling 30-tune long things on the demo folder, it's good to get rid of it and move on.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, tell me about Perth. What was it like growing up in Perth and getting I suppose what was your kind of exposure to dance music? How was the kind of local scene and
so good? Thank you, England, for sending migrants there with drum and bass records or hardcore records. There were so many expats in Perth whose parents had moved out when they were of an impressionable age, and you had guys like Dave Jackson, Greg Packer, who had come from the UK. And suddenly in 1990, they're 16 or 17 as everything's just starting to kick off. And as a result of that, I guess our scene kind of mirrored what England was doing in terms of how quickly we were onto it.
Right.
Like I think Groove Rider came to Perth in 1992.
Really?
Which for a lot of countries, that's early doors.
Almost ground zero.
Bookham as well. Bookham and Rider in 92. And I think we had LSD that year. And then from the birth of Jungle, those guys were regular visitors monthly almost. Someone was there.
So Perth being a drum and bass place, that was very much from the start almost.
Well, it was predominantly, it was mainly happy hardcore.
Right.
That was
the good stuff.
The good stuff.
Real shit.
I love that so much. I have a happy hardcore alias called Mountain Terrace, and I've released on Night Force, like full on banging 4/4 chipmunk piano vocal stuff that I don't know if anyone cared or anyone figured it out, and probably both. But I can remember sort of going to see the Jungle set at a rave. And so you'd have Hixie and Sharky and, all the happy hardcore guys. And then you'd have a Greg Packer set, and I'd go there and be like, wicked 1 hour of 96 Jungle. But I guess, whilst this is 30 years ago, I felt like I was a late bloomer in the dance music scene because I was so into bands. I was playing in a punk band. We gigged every week for maybe 5 years.
What did you play?
I play drums. And everyone says, why aren't you the drummer in Pendulum? I said, well, have you seen our drummer? That's why I'm not the drummer in Pendulum. But yeah, I was really into that California sort of Fat Records, punk rock sound. I had a zine. I was just so into that scene. But at the same time, you've got things like The Prodigy niggling away and pioneering Australian electronic groups like Itchy and Scratchy and the Severed Heads. And you're just like, you'd catch a tune every now and then and you'd be like, what is that? And I'd tell my punk friends and they'd just be like, not interested, like, don't want to know.
What punk bands were you into?
So I guess the whole like 77 Mohawk UK punk was sort of lost on me. I must admit, the Sex Pistols, Exploited, GBH, that kind of stuff. I had friends who were into that, and there was a section of the scene that was like that, and it just wasn't me personally. I sort of came in 88 Fingers Louie, NoFX, the Australian band Frenzal Rhomb, the Australian band Body Jar, that kind of California, Bad Religion, the start of Propagandy, Operation Ivy, bands like that, where it was a bit of a ska punk influence. That really was my jam. And I haven't stopped listening to that since. I really would like to go and record some more stuff and play the drums again with my old band, but our guitarist passed away recently, so maybe that's a chapter I need to close. But Someone uploaded a VHS recording of us playing in 2001 in a pub in Perth, and there was like all these songs that I'd completely forgotten about, because in 2001 I just was like drum and bass and it was DJing.
Right.
I mean, I was playing gigs with my punk band, and then I would pack my drums into my van, drive to a rave and DJ at 5 a.m. And that carried on for 2 or 3 years. And then it just got to a point where I was like, I can't do both of these things. And, you know, you're spending all of the money you could possibly get on records, and you're just so obsessed with this burgeoning sound of, back then it was techno, or tech drum and bass, or neurofunk, that I was super into. And I was like, punk's not really going anywhere. I sort of started to see the local scene move towards a more sort of hardcore style, getting into like, I guess, bands like Madball and Sick of It All. And I was like on the edge of like enjoying that. And then it became a bit screamy and a bit shouty and a bit pickup change and windmills. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the drum and bass scene where there's ecstasy and women.
Yeah, right. Okay. That sounds better.
Yeah. I mean, I still love both, and I've got, you know, fantastic memories of my time. And I can't remember who it was that put up this meme, but they said every DJ should be forced to be in a punk band for a year. What a great apprenticeship that would be, because I struggle to trust people if they haven't loaded in and out and played to 4 people.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So what year would you say you first became a proper DJ?
99.
Quote unquote DJ? Yeah.
My very first set was house. Played a deep house set in a big club that had a top bar, and I played a bunch of like Naked Music and Nick Holder from Canada and stuff like that. And then we had a really good Tuesday night in Perth in 99 to 2002, where all the DJs would go, everyone would sit down, all the scene would assemble and sort of, you know, rebuild themselves from the weekend. And 4 DJs would play every night, and you would play Liquid and Intelligent and smoother stuff. And that was where I cut my teeth that year, 99. I was going there every week, and I'd play once a month maybe. And I just started to realize that playing records and being involved in that scene was something I probably should have done a while back.
So was the club scene in Perth pretty healthy then?
It was great. We had so many. At one point, I would say in early 2000s, there was a drum and bass night 5 nights a week in Perth.
Wow.
Yeah, just drum and bass.
Wow.
And I felt like we were the main genre that was out there consistently playing gigs. It just felt like everything else started to subside.
Can you put your finger on a reason why that might have been the case? Why it was drum and bass?
It's an interesting one. Psychologists would like to try and break it down and figure out why, and pinpoint why Perth, Western Australia, because Adelaide was very much the same as well, and Melbourne and Sydney weren't, and Queensland was no man's land. Yeah. Something about they'll pin it on the isolation.
I was going to say, because it's the most isolated city in the world, is it?
Other than Hawaii, yeah.
Right.
The isolation, the influx of British, and I think there's just something a little carnal about people from Western Australia, and I'll put on my best Australian accent. We like to go off, and you don't go off to house music. You go off to drum and bass and punk rock. Mm. I'm seeing the same people at the gigs. So I go to the bands and I'll be like, oh, punk dudes, there was a drum and bass club called the Drum Club. Going to the Drum Club, they said, yeah, we're on our way there now. And you see the whole front row doing the 2-step.
Same guys.
That they were doing at the punk shows. And I was like, these genres are so aligned because they're both got people telling you suck, that you're the underdogs, that you just had to be DIY to even exist.
Right.
They were so aligned. And Perth just loved that. Like, we like to go off. Festival crowds would go off. They'd be the biggest mosh pits that bands that had ever seen in their careers. And they're like, what's in the water out here? And I'm like, I don't know, but we're drinking it. It was a very unique place to grow up being into drum and bass, because it was just so normal for it to be everywhere. Mm. And it wasn't until I started to travel and realized that other parts of the world were so starved for it and no one cared about it. And it was all we cared about.
Right.
I mean, you get your big trance raves and your big techno raves, and they were cool, but they weren't doing 5 weeklies.
Yeah,
they weren't doing all ages raves.
It is a different energy as well, isn't it?
Yeah, like, for sure.
Completely different. Really.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you about Perth. Like, how much did it change? Obviously, there was the big mining boom and loads of money comes. It's not just Perth, obviously Western Australia and the various different parts of it. But like, how much did it change as a city in that sort of 15-year, something in the mid-90s or whatever, till 2010 or whatever, when all that stuff was happening.
When I was gone.
Yeah.
It changed so much. When I left Australia in 2003, I didn't know anyone that worked in mining. Everyone worked in the city, in IT and retail and regular jobs. And then I leave, you know, I'm ignorant to what's going on because I'm focused on the UK and Europe and America. And it's like, we'll go back to Perth and we'll play once a year, but we don't really care what's going on there because career-wise, it wasn't entirely relevant what was going on there. It just, two things happened, and it's not a nice thing to talk about, but mining and meth.
Right.
We didn't have meth in England, and the impact that drug had made on the scene, the punters, the vibe. Like, I'd go home and like, oh, why is everyone so like just sketched out at drum and bass raves? And they're like, oh, they're all on meth. And I was like, what the fuck is meth?
Right. I
was so ignorant to it. And they're like, crystal meth. I was like, that's what those American dudes do. And they're like, well, it's really popular in Australia now.
Yeah.
So everyone was on some different, like, this is mid 2000s, I'd say, sort of 2006 onwards. And I feel like it's righted itself now. The ship is righted. But yeah, suddenly you had all your friends who were away for 4 weeks at a time and back for 1 week. And then they're like, oh, I can't come to your gig because I'm on site. I'm like, what site? I'm like, mining site. I'm like, in the middle of the desert, digging some mineral out of the ground. I'm like, that's different. So yeah, it really changed the landscape, those two things. And I think not enough people probably talk about the drug side of it, but that was a real nasty side of it that I was glad I wasn't there for.
Yeah.
I was gone. And, you know, I'm glad I missed that part of it because it was e-hugs every rave, every weekend while I was there, and I loved that about it. Yeah,
it's funny because, I mean, yeah, you're right that it didn't really happen in the UK. It didn't really happen in Europe, to be honest. And
thank goodness.
Probably, yeah. I mean, a very good thing, to be honest, for the European club scene that it kind of dodged that because, I mean, it was really destructive, right? I mean, you can see it in the States as well.
Promoters and DJs, even now, are still in jail from getting mixed up in that. I know people that had to leave Perth with, you know, for fear of repercussions on their life because they got mixed up in that. And I was like, just make tunes and DJ. Like, this extracurricular is not important because it never was to us, but they were like in the mix, you know. So now it's fine. Now, but we talked about drum and bass here being 18-year-olds in a club. That's what it's like in Perth now. Right. I go to gigs and some guy walked past me. Oh, this was last year. And I was doing during COVID, I was doing some like DJ tutorials and one-to-one lessons and stuff. And one of my students said to me, did you hear what that guy said? And I was like, no. And he said, I feel really bad. I want to go say something. I was like, what did he say? And he said, I can't believe someone that old is still in a nightclub. And the club I was in was the club I played my first set in, in 1999. Okay. And I was like, how can you have this mindset about drum and bass music as an 18-year-old? And I said this to some other person. I said, don't get it twisted. This is your parents' music.
Yeah.
Without people their age and people my age creating this scene, you wouldn't have just been able to waltz in. You didn't have to start it. You just got gifted this beautiful 30-year-old genre that has such a rich discography and is taken seriously. But when we started it, people did not take it seriously. They just thought we were just off our heads and like it was so intense. And, you know, I remember a sound engineer running to the decks to take a needle off a record. It was a Dillinger record because of the distortion of the bass. He thought we were blowing up his sound system. And I was like, it's supposed to be like that. It's sick. Hard Noise by Dillinger.
Yeah, right.
And he was a DJ as well, a really foundation house music DJ from Perth called Steve Mason, who ran a lot of sound systems. He come dashing over and said, oh, what are you doing? And we're all just sitting there like, it's the best thing we've ever heard. Yeah. Can't be 18-year-olds and claim you invented anything, unfortunately. I don't want to be a boomer and sound like that, but you got the walk in because of your parents' generation putting in the work.
Totally.
You're welcome.
So at what point did you realise that you needed to move to the UK? So, I mean, Pendulum obviously existed prior to that?
Briefly.
Yeah.
We started in 2002. It was September 2002. I think I did the first DJ mix and it had nothing we'd made together. Individual tracks as myself under Hornet, Gareth under the name of Speed, and Rob's alias was Ancenic. And we were sort of thinking Pendulum was going to be a label. And then we sat down and wrote some songs together, and we left 1 year after the first instance of it existing. Right. I went on a tour probably 3 months before we left. Came to the UK for a month, went to America for a month, played a couple of shows, the Fridge in Brixton, played at the end actually for Trouble on Vinyl, and then went to America and did a couple of really grassroots things and like slept on people's couches for, weeks on end. And then I got back to Australia with my $420 and I was like, yeah. And we packed up and left. 3 months later, myself and Rob moved to London because I'd met with Dan Stein or DJ Fresh, and he said, I want to sign you guys to our label.
So you were just sending out demos?
AOL Instant Messenger.
Yeah, of course.
Everyone was on AIM sending demos out, and I'd signed via AIM. I'd signed our tune Vault to 31 Records. Yep. Signed a tune to Renegade Hardware, to Dylan's Freak Recordings, to Brillo and Digital's Timeless Recordings. Concord Dawn from New Zealand had taken one single, and then somehow you just used to try as hard as you could to get people's screen names because they were this tightly guarded secret of what their screen name was. And I started talking to Fresh. And at that point, he was very focused on his sort of onward trajectory away from Bad Company as a solo artist and making a crew. And him and Adam F had started to work together. And it just worked out really nice that they decided to move to America to work on some hip hop in New York. And he said, well, while I'm gone, you can stay in my flat. So we just got the hell out of Perth instantly. And I remember putting a post up on the local Perth dance music forum called Technoscape and said, right, we're moving to England. We've had some success. We're going to chase it and we're going to move there. We're doing a final show to say goodbye to Perth. And 9 people turned up.
Okay.
And we were like, thanks Perth.
Yeah.
Love you to bits, but get we were gone. And I don't think we came back for a year after that, which for Australians only last 18 months to 2 years in London. And I was like, I ain't going back there.
Right.
So that was our departure. It was, there's so many things that happened that made it easy to leave. I was involved in this club where I was helping promote it, and the owners sold it and vacated on a weekend and didn't tell anyone. And that was the drum and bass club in Perth. So while I was on that first tour, the club where I'd cut my teeth was gone. We had a huge all ages rave scene in Perth. That ended that same sort of quarter of that year. The guy said, I don't want to do it anymore. No one else stepped up to take over. So that ended. The Weekly Tuesday was gone. And I was like, everything has just aligned for us to leave. Now is the time. Yeah. So if we stayed in Perth, I think Pendulum would have run out of steam after maybe 2 years. Yeah. We'd already plateaued. The local scene was awesome, but it wasn't a career. And I think we, collectively, none of us really had careers. It wasn't like we had other things that we possibly could have done, and music was just something else that we added to our repertoire of daily life. It was like, this is all we're good at.
This has got to have work.
Yeah. And that's what it was. It was sink or swim. Yeah. Very much so. So off we went. Right. Never came back.
So you'd already evidently made, some decent contacts in the UK scene. I mean, that was going to be sort of the general kind of area of inquiry. Like, how easy was it for you to establish yourselves kind of at a wider level to make it into a career? Because I mean, it all moves pretty fast after this point, doesn't it?
I have a saying where I say it went really fast, but it took a long time.
Right.
It felt quick, but at the same time, it felt like torture, and everything was so slow. But I already had heaps of people I knew from the club. We had monthly internationals coming through from England, but I was hesitant to tell them that Pendulum equaled the guy that poured their drinks last year.
Right.
So I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I didn't say like, "Hey, it's me, Paul from Perth."
Right.
I just came in, messaged them on Instant Messenger under the Pendulum Crew account, sent tunes, brokered deals, and a lot of people just didn't remember. You're in a city for 12 hours, you play a show, a guy picks you up from the airport and takes you to the club. You don't remember sometimes who they are. I remember I gave D-Bridge a demo of our tune Vault. He just tossed it in the suitcase as you do. And by the time he got back to England, everyone had cut it to plate,
Really?
was playing it, and he's like, "Hang on a sec, what the? I know this song." Yeah, it was like that. It was like I got back to London. I knew a lot of people, and I knew how to sort of talk to the people that I needed to talk to. But I didn't tell them that I met them. And they're like, no one ever wondered how I had their phone numbers or anything. And I was like, yeah. I drove you around, got you weed, like, took you to your hotel, played before you. Yeah, it was lucky. And I the other two guys, Rob and Gareth, were a bit younger than me and hadn't had that experience.
Oh, right. Okay.
They were in a band before Pendulum as well, which was a fantastic kind of new metal rock band called Exogen. Their drummer was Carl Thomas, who is now known as Shock One, drum and bass guy.
Yep.
So that band went two ways, and Shock One became one half and Pendulum plus me became the other. But they hadn't really dealt with anyone in the dance music world. So it was nice to have that link. And also I was very ballsy back then. I just charged into a China shop and be like, "How's it going? Here's our new song. It goes off." I was very, I watched some interview with myself from 2004 race, and I was just, I just had this Australian dryness about me. And I just used to offend people so much. Like,
really?
We were on DJ Fresh's label. He didn't talk to me for 3 months because I said something about one of his songs. And I didn't think it was a bad thing. I was just like, "Oh, mate, why does it go like that?"
Okay.
And he's just looking at me. And I was like, "I don't know." It didn't feel like a bad thing to say, but times that by most interactions. And I was like, I've got to dial this in a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. Funny times.
Yeah, the move between these kind of super linear kind of tunes and then what you put off camera as being songwriting, song based.
Songs, not tunes. Yeah.
So yesterday I was listening to Another Planet.
Yeah.
Which
audacious.
I have to say, at the time, I found it almost personally insulting, but actually it's great. I mean, it's a brilliant tune.
There's a lot going on in that.
I mean, there is. Yeah. It's like multiple sort of phrases and kind of like call and response sections and stuff. And it's like
time signatures.
It's not an 8-minute Ronnie Size bass line.
No, it's an 8-minute long War of the World soundtrack. Basically,
it is. That's the thing. Because as I was listening to it, because tunes are so much shorter these days.
Yeah.
And it gets to the breakdown in the middle, and it's like, well, this must be the end of a tune. Looked at the it's like, nope, just only halfway through. Like,
yeah. That was a big record to write, and I think it was just arrogant and audacity, which you need sometimes in your career. But like you were saying, the song-based drum and bass, whilst I was into rollers and DJ tools, I never wanted to make those records. Neither did Rob, neither did Gareth. And there's groups historically that were of a similar kind of thing. Alex Reese, his records post Metalheads were very much vocal, song-driven drum and bass. Goldie himself writing Timeless and songs like Inner City Life, like they're not DJ tools essentially to just roll it out. Ronnie Size and Di, you mentioned, made Breakbeat Era with Leonie Laws, which was this incredible vocal project. New Forms by Ronnie Size might have had the DJ tools, but it was very songy as well.
There's all,
so there'd been examples of that we looked at, or maybe I looked at more than Rob, because he wasn't sort of DJing. He was just vibing on what he liked. So a little bit of the audacity and the power of groups like Bad Company, The Usual Suspects, Conflict, and then a little bit of the songwriting of those people, and then Meshuggah and Sepultura and Deicide and, let's throw all of the things we're into, Deftones. Mm-hmm. We're going to make Deftones drum and bass. And everyone was like, "You are idiots." But we got so much flack for it.
I mean, so hang on a sec. Another Planet was on Fresh's label,
It was,
right?
yep.
And Fresh was, I mean, I associated that sound very much with him and his DJ sets and a label. And then you guys were, I suppose, the sort of like emerged as the kind of key producers of that sound. But I mean, to what extent was there a mean, you kind of hinted at it there, but like how much of a backlash was there? But obviously it was immediately popular as well,
Yes.
as there being a backlash. But talk about a little bit about how you guys kind of like, you know, as a sort of imposters into this quite insular scene.
Imposters, not just musically, geographically as well.
Exactly, yeah.
There hadn't been an Australian act that had managed to infiltrate sort of the upper echelon of drum and bass.
There hadn't been a non-British act.
For sure. You had artists, Concord Dawn from New Zealand, Bulletproof from New Zealand, Diesel Boy and AK-1200 from the States, but they, no offense to them, they didn't make a dent. They just
Definitely not
complemented their local sort of scenes via the UK a little bit. MC Tarley, there was great people that did great things. Greg Packer is another one. But yeah, suddenly we're on those lineups. The backlash was what made us try so much harder, because I was always a little miffed about it. I was like, look, if I walk into Black Market or go on Juno or anything, each week there would be 100 new records that came out and maybe one by us. And the one by us made the most amount of insult. Like, people got so about it, but so many people liked it as well.
That's the thing. Very much divided opinion. And in a way which was, I mean, it must have been, I can understand why we would have been miffed about it, but at the same time, must have been extremely helpful.
Very much so, because getting that wider recognition from outside of drum and bass reminded me of being back in Perth, where we'd already achieved everything in that world that we could, and we needed to move on to the next place. So within 2 years of being in London, we'd played Creamfields and Global Gathering, and we played at the Sanctuary Milton Keynes, and I'd had a residency at the End in Fabric, and I was like, if we're going to stay true to what we've done before, this can't be it. The next place has to be in our sights. Suddenly we're in student unions, and that was a huge change. When our first album came out, in between the first and second album, so 2005 to 2008, suddenly I'm not just playing drum and bass gigs, and I'm finding us on DJ lineups with people that had never played with drum and bass DJs either. Playing to audiences had never gone to drum and bass gigs, but suddenly they're dancing to it and they're liking it. And it was via the success that Pendulum had had. And I remember thinking how I felt rude a little bit. Like, what about all these pioneers that I respect so much? How come they didn't get to do this? And I was like, just focus on where you are and what you're doing.
Sure. Let me just ask you about that. I mean, was that something which you guys thought about consciously? Was it your agent who had the idea? I mean, like, how did that happen?
To progress onward?
Yeah, that's kind of like, and specifically in student unions, because that's in hindsight, that's a super smart thing to do, but it's not always an obvious thing, path to it.
It was us, Obi Asika from Echolocation or UTA.
Obi, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
We were his first act.
Is that right?
So we were on a purist drum and bass agency. I struggle with what year this changed, probably 05, I'd say. I was out in Miami. Obi was a promoter in Leeds. A gig called Event Horizon, and he had said, I'm going to start an agency. And he had gone to university with our manager Joe Oakley and our MC Ben Verse. They're all Leeds University, and he wooed us out in Miami and said, I'm starting this new agency, like I could really do some good things with you guys. I'm going to set up an office in London. And we were undervalued on the one we were on before, because we were new and it was a purist drum and bass agency, and you had the hierarchy of DJ Hype, and then you had Pascal, and then you had Andy C and Moving Fusion and Shimon and all these other guys. And I was like, this agent, whilst getting us some crumbs, doesn't see what we see in this project. She sees us as playing second, third, fourth fiddle to Andy C forever. And whilst I respect those guys to the end of the earth and back, we needed to push it more than where they were. Suddenly we meet with Obi, we meet with Joe Oakley, who coincidentally had actually worked for DJ Fresh and was the administrator or editor of Dogs on Acid and ran Brave Big Chaos. So he left there and came with us and was sort of instrumental with Obi, Joe, and then Zane Lowe from Radio 1 started to get onto Pendulum Records and play them on his evening show. Mike Davies from Radio 1 and Zane did 100 best punk songs of all time and put 2 Pendulum tunes in their top 100. And I was like, these are the flowers I thought we'd never get, but what are you going to do with that? And then next minute we're in the student unions and we're playing these shows where you've got promoters at student unions saying, we've never done drum and bass ever. And you are playing drum and bass records to these audiences and something's different about it and it makes more sense and we're okay with it. And it almost felt like you had to be validated to do it. And some people of a purist mindset would be like, F them, they'll, you know, we don't have to suck up to them. But I didn't think that we were sucking up. I felt like we were transcending the true drum and bass scene and just exploring what else was out there and what could be built. You know, what you could create out of the next thing rather than relying on what had already existed for so long. And musically and scene-wise, that was always important to us. Stagnation would be the death of Pendulum if we had have just kept doing. We never stopped like moving forward.
Sure.
You know?
I mean, this is the kind of back to the transcending genre thing, right? To some extent, anyway. Because I mean, what I was going to say previously when we were talking about the sort of development of the act and the band, generally speaking, over a couple of decades, what's actually notable is that the sound of a new record is quite consistent, actually, and the sound. I mean, it gets talked about in a way. I think that lots of different influences come in, and there's more experimentation happens, but actually, you always have the big drops, right? And actually the drum and bass, that snare, for example,
the Pendulum snare
is always there, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I went back and listened to the most recent album before this one, the 2010 one, which is called
Immersion.
Yeah, right, exactly. Which I hadn't ever listened to before, and which is the one that is talked up as being, you know, different. And I can sort of see why people are saying that. And from a drum and bass perspective, yes, okay, it is. But actually, when you're just looking at the sort of the catalogue of the band overall and the sound of the band overall, it is remarkably consistent, I think. And I think, like, when you talk about, you know, having fans who have stuck with you the whole time and actually being able to build the audience over time, like, it's not super surprising to me at all, really. I think it gets talked up more than it is. I mean, even though there has been development, even though there has been, you know, new things have come in, it is consistent, and it is, I think, you know, a band. It's a catalogue which has consistency.
I do agree. I think it might take some people a while to figure that out, though. They might hear the new record and be like, "Oh my god, it's so different." I'm like, let it percolate. You'll see that there is a line, a trajectory here from the first one. I think the third record, Immersion, was a real good culmination of everything we'd done before that. That's personally my favorite one until the new record. There's some songs on the new record that I think Rob has excelled anything we've ever done by leagues. There's one called Cartagena and another one called Archangel, which I just...
Yeah, Archangel's
even in demo stages, I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, I was gushing about our own record on Threads this week. Like, I was like, I just felt so much emotion about the fact that it was out, that it existed, that it had been 15 years, and that from hearing early demo stages to the final, how much he changed it and how much it evolved. And I was like, this is the best that I've ever heard. And I feel weird because it's us. And I was gushing about it, saying, I don't even care that I've been doing this with these guys for 22 years. This fucking record. And I love that about it, that's how the fans are reacting to it as well. There's always a little hesitation with new Pendulum material, though. And some people are like, oh, I'm not sure. And I'm like, yes, good. Because if you like it with all of your fabric and being immediately, you've spent all of that love so quick. I want it to draw out and for people to grow with them as they grow.
Yeah, the best records take some effort.
Yeah,
I think, to get into,
for sure.
But I mean, just to go back to what you were saying before about how the previous topic about being accepted or not, like it is a drum and bass sound palette
for sure
at its heart, right? But it's almost like, but it's become the Pendulum sound palette, right? So I don't know how. I presume there's been a sort of like an acceptance has developed over time, and you guys, and perhaps we're talking about the kind of general positivity. It's there's a bit less animosity than there once was in the whole thing, but or is there? I don't know.
No, I think if it had have been a case of someone coming in and writing one record or a few singles inside someone's chosen genre, and then chipping out straight away and being like, we're done with it. And trying, but in that period of time, trying to kick it with those big guys, you know, who had been there forever. If we had have been like that, it would have been different. Now it's 22 years, 23 years, 4 albums around the drum and bass palette, regardless of how far we stray left or right outside of it. A lot of the songs have that framework, and it was elemental to me. It was just like, can't you see? You guys have, this genre exists because of every other genre. You have taken influence and pilfered and maybe borrowed and sampled from every single thing on earth.
Sure.
We're doing the same thing, but we're also writing some riffs of our own and adding some guitars and adding, you know, sounds that people might not have really done previously, but that's not that different than sampling a jazz record or pinching a breakbeat. We just came at it with our approach of guys in bands who are like, you know, going to write some riffs. But the drop is always important, and that's drum and bass.
Sure.
Well, I don't think we ever did a tune that just nicely rolled in. Oh, there's one called Sounds of Life, which was with an Australian singer called Jasmine Yee. And that is the only song I can think of that really has beats from the edge that you can DJ in and then just gracefully slides in. But the rest of the time it's like ridiculousness, end of the earth, another planet. Let's go.
Right. Yeah, totally. So, I mean, whilst kind of acknowledging the drum and bass thing, I mean, I think the kind of the space that you guys occupy is, or the Prodigy are obvious parallels. Jason Status, obviously, who I think are to a large extent have, I mean, followed your template, maybe with a slightly less degree of, you know, taking in
a little less left and right, a little straight down the.
Yeah, but I mean, even they have done. I mean, they came originally from the dubstep scene, so like, I mean, that was. I mean, their pathway hasn't been straightforward either.
No, they were drum and bass from the day one.
They definitely weren't. I mean,
they I mean, I guess Eastern Jam, but before that, they were on Renegade Hardware, the same as us.
Right.
But and then they delved, and then they got that. I always forget her name. The girl that sung that song of theirs called Time. I feel like they did a similar thing where they changed their tempo a little bit, added some vocals. Suddenly, it's a festival summer anthem.
Yeah.
And where they'd come from before was the moody, like South London, purist, like D&B forever, and they did a similar thing. But yeah, they've stuck, I think, a little more true to the foundation of this music.
Although with still, you know, making those big festival tracks. I mean, to what extent does it? To what extent is the original D&B ethos even a thing anymore, would you say?
Everyone was doing their own slant on it. There was, to my eye, there was no like period where it was just so strictly governed what the framework looked like or what the template looked like. There was always people that were doing left, right and center, just whether or not the wider public got onto it or not. Right. And whether or not the upper echelon of the scene held those guys down so they couldn't get popular, because that was what was happening even to us. You know, there was so many artists that had the OGs of their scenes being like, oh, sign to my label so that you can,
well,
you know.
I had talked about this with Scream, actually.
We
were talking about the garage version of that. And I mean, his take actually was that the garage guys were the original kind of like militant scene protectors. And when grime started to emerge, this is when it kind of really kicked off. And like, you know, these kind of like aging garage DJs trying to
hold down grime.
Yeah, right. Which is completely absurd.
You guys
you can also understand why they would have wanted
protection.
To have done it. Like, yeah.
If they've chosen this as a career, they got to, you know, it's cutthroat and it moves so fast. You got to do anything you can to protect yourself. But you guys had that grime TV station. I forget what it was called.
Yeah.
If you sent a clip in, even if it was filmed on a Nokia phone, they would play it. And we get to London in 2003 and we're literally watching it going, this is the sickest thing I've ever seen.
Right.
And it was like, who made the beat for it? It was that Junior Spesh.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Things like that blew up. And I was like, we're in the right place because this is just mental. It was Chrissy Chris that did the beat for that. Yeah. The Metal Messiah did a thing about it. And I was like, when that was all unfolding, we're sitting there writing D&B and we're like, look what these guys are doing. There's no rules. So I guess we just did our version of "There's no rules, do what you want."
Sure.
Rob's going to sing on songs. Fresh was the first one to sing on their own songs. There's not many people that sang on their own tunes.
Yeah, right.
So-
what was the first track with a full vocal that you guys did?
Our second song. The second tune we ever made was called Spiral.
Oh, really?
In 2003.
Of course, yeah. 'Cause it didn't even occur to me that was him, but of course it.
That was Rob.
It's like, yeah.
And very, very early, because he was the singer in the band prior. So a lot of the vocals that you'll hear on Hold Your Colour from 2005 were parts of his band songs from 5 years earlier.
Oh, right.
I was like, I'm sure this is something, like when he was doing the actual song Hold Your Colour. There's lines in that I remember from his band, and he was always going to sing on our records, and we were always going to do that. But Fresh was probably, God, he got some heat for it as well, though. I remember people thinking, what is this?
Yeah, I remember that.
I mean, there's so much other stuff you can focus on, but that are good if you're a little scared to embrace people flexing their artistic sort of passions. But it's hard to sometimes turn a blind eye to it and just not be like, "What are you doing, mate?" Especially in jungle and in drum and bass. We need those people, though.
Especially with vocals, right? Vocals is this kind of thing which are, yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes.
But yeah, we got flack, we got heat, we got people trying to kick us off the decks, we got every single person I felt like for a period that we'd ever worked with tried to rinse us or take the piss or reissue records without asking, which was why we left Breakbeat Chaos in the first place.
Really?
We put out an album, compilation. I did the mix for the second disc. And then I guess there was wind that we were going to leave, and I felt like they just got a bit freaked out by it, and we wanted to go to a major. And so next thing you know, there's a second version of this same thing with like new songs on it, which were demos that we hadn't even finished, repackaged and re-released it. And I was like, why is everyone trying to take the piss? So we had to really have our wits about us, because, I ran into people that had released our records 20 years ago that I hadn't seen for 15 years. And, you know, you've seen them in a club for the first time. They're like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about a reissue," you know? And I'm like, "Oh, let it go, man. Yeah, vinyl's hot again." I was like, "No, mate, no, it's not happening." And then I remember someone said, "You don't happen to have the master for that record I released of yours, do you?"
You haven't got the contract.
It's a contract. We haven't got paid like $1.50 for that one. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Everyone tries to hold people down, and now I feel that is gone. Do what you want. Put it out yourself. Be your own manager.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because, obviously that whole thing brings its own challenges and brings its own problems along with it, right? Because I think basically what we have now is that, like, that isn't really... there are splintered versions of scenes, but I don't think there's anything equivalent to that early drum and bass scene or the early garage scene or whatever. Certainly not with the
tier system.
Yeah, right. Which obviously, as you know, you've described, is not always the best arrangement, but also it also brings some strengths with it too, right?
I agree.
And
You
some
need some wiser heads, some older heads who have got the best interest of the genre and the longevity of it and the history in their mind, rather than just how many clicks can I get? Yeah. Because it's so ruthless now and so cutthroat and so just populated with so many people. People will do anything to achieve the smallest wins, which to me just looks so pointless, but they would sell their nan for a few million streams. And I'm like, that's where we're at now. You do need those guardians of where we came from. I think that's important. Otherwise it cheapens the entire thing, not just my genre, but of every genre. If all that people want to see is whoever is hot on TikTok this week, or whoever's got this one drop that some EDM influencer posted, I'm like, man, it's just so meaningless. Like you delete those apps that none of that makes any impact on your life. It doesn't really matter at all. But having those people that have got that in its best interest is important. Yeah,
but where is that found, what do you think? Because, I don't think it does. It exists in sort of isolation. There are still, like, labels doing the thing, and, like, there are still examples of it. But, like, how do you, if you're a kid starting out now, how do you find that kind of infrastructure?
No clue.
Yeah.
I can't work it out. I've thought about this. If I started fresh, say I stopped being part of Pendulum, I just went off and was Hornet, and started from zero with that. What a confusing place to be.
Yeah.
Do I make TikTok short form content and try and appeal to people on a comedy sort of tip or a relation sort of tip where you show I'm like you as well, I'm in the dance, by the way, here's my new single? Like, I don't know, it's
over or anything like that.
yeah, it's just it's like SoundCloud, like rappers, you know, yeah, my mixtape fam. I don't know how you would start now. I feel like it's the most confusing landscape ever, but new things still keep popping. You get there'll be a new singer every few months who'll come with something, and I'm still constantly impressed by it. But the longer I'm in it, the less sense it makes when you've got, it's such a corporate and such a business oriented game now. And I have people talking about stats and dynamics and plans and projects. I'm just like, you could do all that and nothing will work. It still doesn't work.
Yeah.
So there's no true foolproof way of doing any of this business now. I think you've just got to make as much art as you can and see what sticks. Or take 15 years off.
Also a good thing to do, especially if you can keep DJing and people want to see you play. That's good.
Thank God I'm good at that. I think we're all really good at it, and that's what's kept us going is, I hate the legacy act term, but those albums did impact people a certain way for a long time of their lives, and they have kept that in their hearts. And I'm eternally grateful for that.
Totally. So this has been great. Last question. Tell me about playing before Beyoncé at Glastonbury.
Rob will say it sucked.
Okay.
I was in the sound booth watching this, and that Glastonbury set was the most raucous, riotous, out of control thing I've ever seen at a festival of that caliber. People started letting off flares from boats, not just the ones you wave at the football, like the ones that go up in the sky. And the band was cooking, like it was so intense. And it didn't matter who played before or after us. It was totally irrelevant. After the set was finished, it was just like, we might as well just go home now. I'm sure the people that came to see her that day were having a whale of a time when she was on, but that Glastonbury performance, I just remember standing there in the sound desk just thinking like, how do you replicate this on Earth? This is some alien thing that is just impossible to ever have again. We've done it heaps of times since then, but that particular show, I'm glad you asked about that because the footage is on YouTube. The band sounded very different back then, way less polished, way more raucous. And yeah, just the crowd footage. Every time you see crowd footage of a crowd going off on YouTube, I find that the reality of how that looks is 10 times more intense.
Right.
So I look at that and I'm like, holy, for a Glastonbury where people are camping and not sleeping for 4 or 5 days, for that much energy to come out, that was remarkable. But yeah, I don't remember Beyonce's set.
Well, I mean, tough act to follow, right?
Yeah, I think we've done a few like that. I had to DJ after the Wu-Tang Clan.
Right.
Exit Festival in Serbia.
Okay.
And they said, all the other stages have closed, so everyone's on the main stage now. And I said, how many people are here? And they said, all of them. Like, how many is that? And they're like, 57,000 or so.
Quite a lot.
Yeah, so we've had some really intense things like that. Like, they come and they go, and you just sit there and go, how was it possible that I managed to survive that? Yeah, and get through it. Like I had to play before Tiesto in Buenos Aires.
Okay.
And they had been chanting his name for 3 hours before my set, including throughout the set of the guys before me, who was W&W, who played the same stuff that Tiesto plays. They chanted his name through their set. And I was like, I am cooked. 80,000 people just standing there like, trance now. But yeah, it's been a life, man. I'm pleased I'm still here doing it.
Nice. Well, thanks for coming on the show, man. Really
Pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Music, not diving, with Scuba.